Hello, Sam-ariffic science fans! Welcome to another Book Rambles video, the series where I take a little break from science to talk about my favorite fantasy books. Today we're talking about Wings of Fire by T. Sutherland. Until very recently, this series had 15 books, 2 Legends novels, and 4 short stories released between July of 2012 and April of 2022. 21 books in 10 years. After that, the author understandably wanted a break, but she did say that book 16 was coming, and finally, in March 2026, 4 years after the last main series book, The Hybrid Prince was released. Today, I want to talk about it. There will be spoilers ahead, so you have been warned. Today, we're gonna unfold the world of The Hybrid Prince, making it the first thing that I've unfolded the world of twice, since I also did it in this video where I made my predictions for the book. Anyway, roll the theme song. Let's just get the bad stuff out of the way first. There isn't much, but there is some. First of all, and probably the biggest one for me, is the sheer amount of new characters. I get why we need a mostly new cast given the new setting, and the fact that it would be near impossible to bring many new old characters back, but it still feels confusing. They were all competing for page time, making it so that with the exception of very few, most of the new characters were just too much and they were hard to get to know. The other thing I don't like is the setting. The Dungeon Isle is literally just Australia. Both have kangaroos and platypuses, the Court of Refuge looks like the Sydney Opera House, both are south to the rest of the world, and the Dungeon Isle is even the same climate as Australia. Also, I don't know if this was intentional or not, but the spikes on all wildlings' backs are highly reminiscent of thorny devils, a spiky Australian lizard. Well, it is kind of funny, I wish it was just a bit more original. There were also a few conveniences in this book that felt like they happened just for the plot, namely the fact that you could escape the island if you were hybrid descended from Queen's Summit and Retribution. We know they did this just because they thought it'd be funny, but still. Also, I don't get how no one found the escape eggs in all 3,000 years they were there, but again, whatever. My final complaint is just a nitpick, but in the Guide to the Dragons of Pyre and Pantola, the Pyre and Dragons were all fine, but at the Pantola section, it was weird. At the end of Arc 3, Queen Wasp of the Hivewings was imprisoned and Lady Jewel became the Hivewing Queen. It then said that the Silkwings and Leafwings would make a joint nation ruled by an elected assembly. But in the guide, it didn't list any queens for the Hive or Silkwings at all, and the Leafwings still said Queen Sequoia was the queen. It did the same thing in the Guide to the Dragon World. This is just a nitpick, but it still bugs me. Now on to the good stuff, and there's so much of it. First of all, there was so much lore. We got a confirmed date for the Legends of the Hive, and learned more about that, and found out what was up on Pyria 3,000 years ago. And we, of course, got the backstory of the Dungeon Isle and how it came to be. Now, as much as I love the lore, it was a lot, so let's make sure we have it all straight right now. First of all, before I jump into the story, there were a few key differences between society 3,000 years ago compared to now, so I'm going to list those. First, number 1, was that while each tribe still had a queen who ruled the kingdoms, they also had something called the Queen's Claw, a council that enforced laws and stuff. Secondly, they had something called the Accord of Dragonkind, which was basically a treaty that all tribes agreed to sign after the scourging. The treaty made many laws, but it specifically banned hybrids. The third and biggest difference was that instead of 7 tribes, there were 9, so the borders looked a bit different. This was still in time with the Nightwings lived on the Talon Peninsula, first of all, and the Beetlewings and Leafwings also had their own kingdoms. The Rainforest Kingdom was split east to west in half, with the Leafwings living on the west and the Rainwings living on the east. The Skywing Kingdom was split north to south, with the Skywings living on the north half and the Beetlewings living on the south. This meant that the Beetlewings and Leafwing kingdoms showed a border, and on the border was a village called Harmony that both tribes' queens knew about. Now, a village existing is fine, but the village had hybrids and outlaw dragons from all tribes. It was kind of a mix of present-day Scorpion Den and Possibility. The Beetlewing and Leafwing queens, Euphoria and Magnolia, wanted to expand Harmony to a point where it was the whole kingdom mirrored the Beetlewing and Leafwing kingdoms. However, before they could carry out this plan, Bloodshed and Precipice, the Skywing and Nightwing queens' claws, found the village and it was dubbed illegal. Because of this, the Nightwings and Skywings were planning to attack and destroy Harmony. But the Beetlewing Claw, Darkling, alerted Magnolia and Euphoria that the secret of harmony was out and wanted to kill the Nightwing and Skywing queens before they could attack. Queen Euphoria didn't like the idea and gave orders against it, instead saying to seek the help of the Rainwing Queen, Queen Hibiscus. However, at some point before that, Hibiscus had made a deal with the Skywing Princess Summit, who was Queen Falcon's sister, basically saying that the goal was to get Summit on the throne, meaning Falcon needed to die. So what probably happened was when Darkling gave Hibiscus an excuse to kill Queen Falcon, she took it and sent an assassin named Lemur along with Darkling to kill her once and for all. But they also had orders to kill Queen Retribution of the Nightwings. But this was told to them to send them into a trap. Falcon was killed, and before Darkling and Lemur could go get Retribution, they were captured. Later, we see a scene of now Queen Summit and Queen Retribution in the Night Kingdom later in the book. Summit says that they were following orders given to them by Queen Euphoria, even though it was actually Hibiscus who issued the order. Retribution responded by saying that was not what they said at their trial. Anyway, a few kingdom invasions and unfair punishments later, the Beetlewings and Leafwings were no longer welcome on Pyria. Some escaped to Pantola, which is what led to the legends of the Hive, but most were captured. A Skywing animus dragon named Precipice was tasked with making them a prison, and she chose the Dungeon Isle. After a long time of planning, she made a spell to make a barrier anyone could enter, but no one could exit, unless they were descended from Summit and Retribution, which I've given my thoughts on already, or raised the two last surviving eggs in Harmony on the mainland. If they did that, then when the Dragonets were 3 years old, they would return and free everyone else. Precipice added the last part without permission, and the eggs were enchanted not to hatch until someone took them in. She also enchanted some robot dragons to be guards, and assigned everyone categories based on how evil they were. Over time, these little metal dragons became practically alive, giving themselves a tribe name, the Sharpwings, which was kind of adorable. The prisoners and their descendants stayed there, while other dragons wandered in over time. 2,000 years from present day, an animus dragon named Waterfall, who was descended from Fathom and Indigo, wandered in and built a huge palace called the Court of Refuge. She also brought with her Blob. Blob was a piece of wood carved into an octopus who Fathom enchanted to come to life for Indigo in Legends Darkstalker. Everyone who reads these books loves Blob, so it's great to know that he's still doing good and alive. Instant 5-star, 10 out of 10, A+, 100%, however you rate your books. This book deserves perfect, just because Blob has returned. This is great. The reveals are insane, and now we know more about the history of the world. Even though Pyria and Pantola are quite fleshed out and present, so much of their past has been shrouded in mystery, and I'm glad to see that changing. Now, even though earlier in the video I said I didn't love how much the Dungeon Isle was literally just Australia, it is cool in some ways. Like Australia has a bunch of unique animals, the Dungeon Isle has something we've never seen before. The Wildwings. I love these guys being part of the series. Their existence makes perfect sense, and they're really cool. They don't have any specific power or design. They're just any dragon who isn't part of one tribe, or even 2 or 3. They're basically the mutts of the dragon world, and it's great. And on the topic of characters, 3 Moon's Monarch is still alive. She was the old Silkwing Queen before she made the horrible decision of advocating to Wasp. This was supposed to mean she spent the rest of her life in prison, but instead she escaped and now has a Hivewing husband and a hybrid son named Royal. When I saw this, I was shocked, but I love it. This reveal is absolutely insane. But here's the thing, since Umber has no idea about the drama on Pantola, ooh, that rhymes, this doesn't matter to him, and only the readers know what this really means, assuming they've read books 11 through 15. It's really fun. I honestly don't have many thoughts on the characters with the exception of a few, because there's so many that they compete with each other for time in the spotlight, so here are the characters that actually had stuff going on. Umber and Sora are both really good here, and I'm glad Umber actually did stuff, which the first protagonist of each arc constantly struggles with. Pleasant surprise. I also liked his internal conflicts about worrying about Sora, and if he's good enough to keep her safe. Sora is also a great character. She seems to have a PTSD episode during the Kraken fight, and I need to be reminded that the War of Sandwing Succession ended half a year ago. I don't have many thoughts on Mulberry, but his dragon speak is really cool. Probably his Nightwing and Leafwing heritage mixing to make that. Platypus and Quokka are both a bunch of fun, Platypus especially. He honestly feels like a better version of Kinkachu. Also, the whole ghost thing was really interesting. Beryl and Snakeroot are also really interesting, but feel kind of bland. Beryl especially feels like a more mellow version of Scarlet. Also, on the topic of that, we know that Scarlet married Canyon, who turned out to be Beryl's son. We also know that Beryl is descended from Queen Summit, and so her son obviously is as well. So unless there was a succession crisis in the Sky Kingdom, then Scarlet accidentally married her cousin. Anyway, Aurora was really interesting. I'm surprised we've never had a popular character in this series before, so getting one and even experiencing some content was so cool. The series often just shoves us into palaces, so getting to experience some normal life was amazing. Okay, now it's time to talk about the prophecy, which was really Snakeroot's whole purpose in the book. So the prophecy. Dragons lost and long forgotten, abandoned in the sunlit isle, ruled by power and betrayal, haunted by an ancient trial. Lines of blood will hold the key as danger threatens from the past, and when the claws are at his throat, the hybrid prince will rise at last. Who springs the trap? Who saves the queens? And which of them is friend or foe? The smallest claws must choose a path to right or wrong from long ago. But is it safe and is it wise to break the curse and release the tide? It happens when the walls come down, if something else is trapped inside. Going through that line by line, the first verse feels pretty self-explanatory. It seems to refer to the dragons on the dungeon isle, acknowledging that a trial from 3,000 years ago has decided the fate of their lives. The second verse is more interesting, though. I think lines of blood will hold the key refers to the memory room, and that you need blood to activate it. When the claws are at his throat, the hybrid prince will rise at last. Has me wondering, though, is this referring to Mulberry? Platypus is technically a hybrid prince descended from Queen Euphoria, and Dugong is descended from the original Mudwing royal family before the succession crisis. Both these people aren't really princes, but neither is Mulberry anymore since his parents are in jail. And he's also not really a hybrid, he's a tribrid, descended from 3 tribes. I don't know, but I'm just saying it might not be him. Who saves the queens is clearly referring to the fact that a bunch of them went missing in the epilogue. Well, on that later. And which of them is friend or foe is probably just asking who will help the dragons on the dungeon isle, and which queens will hate them once they're reminded about what happened 3,000 years ago. And when the prophecy refers to the smallest claws, I think it means Umber, since he's the smallest in his sibling group. But I don't know how he'll right a wrong from long ago, or even which wrong he'll right, since it seems there was a lot of them. I think the fourth and final verse is referring to letting all the people in the dungeon isle go free, and what it means for the continents, maybe even asking if it's a good idea. But I have no idea what the last part. What happens when the walls come down if something else is trapped inside? I suppose only time will tell. Okay, I know this video is getting long, but first I quickly need to cover the epilogue. Most of the queens are missing. Queens Snowfall, Thorn, Ruby, Glory, Sequoia, and ex-Queen Wasp all went missing. Oh yeah, so did Kinkachu for some reason. The only one who actually saw that his appearance happen was Prince Cliff, who said Queen Ruby just poof, vanished. We can assume this means the other queens had the same thing happen. But how? Anna's magic was destroyed in Book 15. Also, why is Kinkachu missing? What did she do? Also, one of the eggs is missing too. One wants help free the dragons from the Court of Refuge. Solar said she saw a shadowy figure. What is happening? Why won't Coral and Warhenmaid disappear? Did they and we just didn't see it? If Wasp is missing, what to say Beryl and Snake returned as well? This is one of the worst cliffhangers I've ever seen. Anyway, that's about all for this video, Sam-ariffic science fans. This video was long. Stay tuned for next week when we answer one of the most important questions of the Easter season. I hope you enjoyed, and thank you for watching.